Hi there. Today I'm going to talk about cuisine butter tart. It is an interesting topic. Now, what is cuisine butter? Well, it refers to a kind of cooking fat that is used in French cuisine, and it is also sometimes known as clarified butter or ghee. And so today we're going to talk about what exactly it is and how it is used in cooking. And just before we get into that, if you have not yet done so, then do please consider subscribing to my channel. I would love to have you here, and as always, thank you so much for your support. Now, cuisine butter is basically butter that has been purified. In other words, they take regular butter and they remove some of its elements. They remove some of the water and milk solids. So what they do is they melt down butter and then they boil it gently. And then they skim off all the foam that forms on top. And then once that is done, they continue to boil it until most of the water has evaporated and the butter has become quite thick. So this is basically like a very slow process where you are removing certain elements from butter to make it more concentrated and more intense. Now, you may be wondering why they do this and what the benefits are, and it essentially comes down to two things. One is that it has a higher smoke point. So this means that it can be heated to a higher temperature without it breaking down or burning. And secondly, it has a longer shelf life. So, if you think about it, butter is made from milk, and milk has a tendency to spoil or go bad first. But by removing some of that milk, they make it a little bit more concentrated and therefore it lasts a lot longer. So, in general, it has a very similar flavor to regular butter, but it is just more intense. And because it has a higher smoke point and a longer shelf life, it is often used in cooking, particularly for frying, and there are two different kinds. One which is called blonde and the other is brown. Now, the difference between the two is pretty simple. When they make blonde cuisine butter, they remove all the water and milk solids from the butter, and then they stop. But when they make brown butter, they continue to fry the butter after they've removed all the water and milk solids, and they fry it until it becomes a nice brown color. And this gives it a slightly different flavor. It's not necessarily better or worse, but it does have a slightly different flavor and aroma. So it is occasionally used in desserts or other recipes where they want that brown butter flavor. So brown butter, as you can probably guess, is also sometimes called burnt butter. And sometimes people will call blonde butter just regular butter. So sometimes you will see the term butter tart, and it might be blonde butter tart or brown butter tart. But it's also important to note that it's not necessarily the best choice for every recipe. For example, if you're making cookies, often the water and milk solids that they remove from the butter is what gives cookies their tenderness. So, if you use cuisine butter, then your cookies might end up being a little bit too crispy. So, it's as important to know when it's appropriate to use cuisine butter and when it might not be the best choice. If you're interested in trying it out, one way to do so is to buy it at the grocery store. Some grocery stores carry it in the international section or the baking aisle, or you can make it yourself. And it's very easy to do. Just melt down butter, boil it gently and skim off any foam. And then continue to boil it over medium-low heat until it reduces by about half. And then once it's reduced by half, then you can remove it from the heat and let it cool. And that's it. That's how you make it. And if you want to try brown butter, all you need to do is continue to fry the butter until it becomes a nice brown color. And again, this is very simple to do, but it does require some patience. You just need to keep frying the butter over low heat and constantly stir it until it becomes the right color. One thing I do want to point out though, when you are making brown butter, sometimes people get nervous when they see it turning brown because they think they are burning it. But if you are doing it correctly, you should not be burning the butter. If it starts smoking or if it smells like burnt butter, then you are heating it too quickly or over high heat. But if you keep it over low heat and you keep stirring it, it should turn brown without burning. And really, what you're looking for is a nutty aroma and flavor. So once it has that, then you know that it is ready. I did find a recipe online for brown butter that I thought was pretty good, and it said to cook 1 pound of butter over medium heat and to cook it for about 10 minutes. But again, it depends on how much butter you are using. So, if you are only cooking a small amount, then it will cook down quicker. But if you're cooking a lot, then it will take a little bit longer. And so the moral of the story is just to be patient. Keep cooking the butter and just keep tasting it to see if it's ready. Another tip is that it is best to use sweet cream butter when making cuisine butter or brown butter, because it will give it the best flavor. When you make brown butter, you often see little specks at the bottom of the pan. These are milk solids that have caramelized, and some people will strain the butter to remove these specks, but personally I don't bother. I just leave them in. It doesn't really affect the flavor and it doesn't affect the way I use it. But if you want to strain it, then feel free to do so. It's also important to note that although it has a higher smoke point than regular butter, it still has a relatively low smoke point. So you don't want to use it for high smoke point cooking methods such as deep frying. Well, hopefully you now know what cuisine butter is and how it is made. It is often used in cooking, especially in French cuisine. So, if you want to learn more about French cuisine or French cooking techniques, then click on the video playlist on screen now. And until next time, happy cooking and bon appétit!